welcome to the virtual Sunday service for the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lake Norman. Our fellowship walks diverse paths to find meaning and purpose, but we are united by our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all, and the obligation to express our faith through acts of justice and compassion. My name is Sandy McFeely, and I've been an active member of this congregation since 2013. When we get together as a community, we light a chalice and share a thought about what that means. Today's thought is from Leslie Pole Kosbow. She's a UU leader and community gardener in Portland, Oregon. Flame of fire, spark of the universe that warmed our ancestral hearth, agent of life and death, symbol of truth and freedom. We strive to understand ourselves and our earthly home. Our speaker this morning is our minister, Reverend Pat Jobe. This morning he will talk about the roots of Mother's Day today and the lofty aspirations of its founders. One of the founding mothers was Julia Ward Howe, whose 202nd birthday comes up in a couple of weeks. She was a thinker, a writer, and an advocate of the abolition of slavery and the adoption of women's suffrage. As often happens with talented and energetic women, her family was of two minds about her. She recalled that her uncle, John Ward, said this about her. You can imagine the tone. This is my little girl who knows about books and writes an article and has it printed. But I do wish that she knew more about housekeeping. We will learn this morning about the things that Julia did in and for the world that were far more important than laundry and dusting. And now I'll turn it over first to Reverend Pat and then to our own Mike Alec for his musical reflection.
Today is Mother's Day. Mother's Day, as it is celebrated in our greeting card, send flowers, take her out to lunch culture, is a good and decent holiday. However, the founders of Mother's Day, Anna Jarvis and her mother, Ann Reeves Jarvis, and one of our matron saints, Julia Ward Howe, all had hoped the holiday would lead all mothers and their allies to organize against war, organize against standing military, against arms production, against other warlike tendencies among the menfolk. Julia Ward Howe was particularly shocked and horrified that the Battle Hymn of the Republic, which she wrote, Glory, Glory, Hallelujah, which she wrote, had become so associated with war, and especially the Union victory in the American Civil War. It shocked her and horrified her to the point that she spent the rest of her life speaking out against war, advocating for Mother's Day to become an international peace holiday. She was, of course, a Unitarian, and therefore someone who believed that good and decent behavior was essential in a world that was so full of bad and indecent behavior. I encourage you right here, right now, to feel good. Feel good about being with us this morning. Feel good, exceedingly good, outrageously good, to be among people who share your values. Reach deeply into the very center of your being and feel good about all the light and love in the universe. We are part of that. So good. I hope your Mother's Day is delightful, even if you aren't a mother. Whether your mother is here or not, I hope you appreciate the dream of the Jarvis women and our beloved Julia Ward Howe. And someday, I hope you will share with me the belief that every sword can be beaten into plowshares and pruning hooks. I hope you will share with me the dream that the lion will lie down with the lamb and we will study war no more. That never again will soldiers with guns stand on battlefields and fire across at other soldiers with other guns with the intention of killing each other. I hope that comes. I believe it's possible. I believe it's possible that even arms manufacturers can convert their machinery into making playground equipment and medical equipment and turn swords into plowshares and pruning hooks. Let us never forget how people are affected in every situation. There's a quote from Lewis Fisher from which comes that prompt to never forget how people are affected in every situation. He's talking about how people are changed who have been influenced by Gandhi, Mohandas K. Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, the great sage of India, the George Washington of India. He writes, when you are affected by Gandhi, we are redeemed from the sense of commonplace and futility and urged not to weary in well-doing. We are called to never forget how people are affected in every situation. To never lose our temper or succumb to hate, to preserve a gentle sense of humor, even as life tests us. We are called to a gentle manner and spirit in contrast to the ruthlessness and brutality of our day. We are called to a gentle manner and spirit in contrast to the ruthlessness and brutality of our day. I wish I had that tattooed on the insides of my eyelids, especially to never forget how people are affected in every situation. Let's feed the hungry, house the homeless, work with prisoners for more dignity and eventually more freedom. Let us be the socially active, politically correct, religiously liberal people we imagine ourselves to be. But let us never overreach with our presumptions. Let's check our egos before we allow our anger to overtake our compassion, our resolution to overtake our tolerance, and our exclusivity to overtake our inclusivity. We will win some battles. We will win some battles. And we have to be careful of shooting the wounded. Mark Twain said newspaper writers are people who come down out of the hills after the battle is over and shoot the wounded. I never really much liked that quote, having spent a great deal of my life writing for newspapers. The great struggle we are currently involved in may well end with our winning some of those battles. But we have to be careful, kind, considerate, even loving and forgiving as we scale the heights and swim the raging rivers. And that, finally and forever, is what Mother's Day is about, or it should be about. The Jarvis women ran a hospital in their home in West Virginia for the war wounded. They were so close to the combat that they served soldiers from both armies, men who had stood across battlefields with the insane notion of killing each other. Using the primitive healing tools of that time, they nursed young boys who would spend the rest of their lives missing arms and legs because of wounds inflicted in an instant of madness on the battlefield. They grieved so hard for these young soldiers that they spent decades advocating for Mother's Day to be a peace holiday. Their original intent has been lost, but we can take some heart from our remembering today, and take some pride from knowing that Julia Ward Howe, our beloved Unitarian ancestor, was among their most prominent allies. Let's look more deeply at the whole idea of mothering. Let's look at the mothers we find in nature, the mother bird feeding her young, the mother lion nurturing the cubs until they are ready to hunt on their own. Dare we peek just an instant at how horribly the natural order has been disrupted in the hearts of human mothers who do not care for their young and nurture them only until they are ready to hunt on their own. We grieve the loss of that natural order, and we imagine ourselves in a good Unitarian Universalist to be those who, as often as possible, restore that natural order. Let's take a deep breath of that reality for just a moment. Breathe it in. Breathe it in. We may not be perfect. We may not even approximate perfect or have any notion of what it looks like, but we know what good mothering is. Breathe it in. Breathe it in. You heard me say 2 weeks ago that I love Marshall Rosenberg and his nonviolent communication. Check him out on YouTube, Marshall Rosenberg. One of his laugh lines is that there are no perfect parents. Try as we might, we are going to mess up. My children can give you long lists of my mistakes. I once lost my temper with my 7-year-old son, my 5-year-old son, my 2 oldest sons. I began to growl and rage, and I said, why can you not just come upstairs, brush your teeth, put on your pajamas, and get in bed? And my 5-year-old replied without any fear of retribution, because we're kids, Dad. Child psychologists assure us that children do not plan and plot and scheme to drive us crazy. They do it naturally, without a second thought. Without being sloppy and sentimental, I can testify that I had a wonderful mother. And such mothers are of infinite value. In one of my books, I write that the reason I will never climb a water tower with a high-powered rifle is because I had a wonderful mother. She had very high standards. When I told her once that she and my brother had very high standards, she said, "You mean we give people a hard time?" I did not mean that, but she was very funny. She was delightfully funny. She asked me when I first became a minister if I knew of a counselor who could deal with my father's gambling. I said, "Mama, if you are having a problem with Daddy's gambling, I'll try to find a counselor who can help you deal with it." She twisted her mouth to the side and looked at me and said, "Don't you know, in all cases where counseling is involved, it's always the other person's problem." She was funny. I recently offered to cast out demons for a young man when he learned I was a minister. He said he didn't have any demons, but his wife sure did. What does it mean to nurture our young until they are ready to hunt on their own? Do we teach them kindness and generosity? Or do we scare them that the world is full of evildoers and they better be very, very careful? Here's one of my favorite stories. An old woman sat on the porch of her general store, and Man pulled up in a car, rolled down the window. He said, I'm thinking about moving here. He said, what kind of people live here? She said, what kind of people lived where you came from? He said, they were awful busybodies. The scouts and the youth sports teams were always begging money, and do-gooders were always out wasting food on poor people and rehabbing houses for poor people, taking care of criminals when they got out of prison, and even picking up litter off the side of the road. The old lady shook her head and said, that same kind of people live here. You better move on. Try to find another place to live. Later that day, another car stopped. Another man rolled down his window and said, I'm thinking about moving to your community. What kind of people live here? She said, what kind of people live where you came from? He said, they're wonderful. They stay busy with community service activities. There's always scout troops and youth sports teams, always out recruiting help and raising money. They feed poor people, rehab houses for poor people. They take care of criminals when they get out of prison. They even pick up litter off the side of the road. The old lady nodded her head and said, move here. We've got that same kind of people here. You'll like it. It's not just beauty that is in the eye of the beholder. It's scouts and youth sports teams too. Community service. We nurture our young until they are ready to hunt on their own by teaching them kindness, generosity, community involvement, and then give them very gentle warnings that everybody in the world wasn't raised by good mamas. Two young friends of mine recently graced my life, and as they were leaving, I gave them some advice. I told them, fellas, as you go through life, you're going to meet some awful characters. I warned them that selfish, mean, hateful, and unkind characters are out there. But I asked them to remember, as they have to deal with these villains, that these villains were not raised by their mama and daddy. Sure, some mothering fails. The fickle finger of fate will send some children into the world who are determined to ride like the wind and not care much who gets hurt in the process. It happens. But there is a world of good done by nurturing the young until they are ready to hunt on their own. As a congregation, we have demonstrated a capacity to care for each other. And you will hear me say again and again, that is the genius of Unitarian Universalists. Our karma ran over our dogma a long time ago. And the only place we have to look for the sacred is the sacred we find in each other. We are open and accepting to others who have dogma. We don't judge Christians, Jews, Hindus, Muslims, or people who worship the flying spaghetti monster. We hold that there are many paths to doing what Ram Dass described as walking each other home. The road is long with many a winding turn, and it leads to who knows where. So on we go. But he ain't heavy. He's my brother. And she ain't heavy. She's my sister. Good mothers are good models for good lives. Nobody's perfect. We all could use a little help from time to time. Happy Mother's Day. In memory of the Jarvis women and Julia Ward Howe, let's say someday, maybe someday, we will study war no more. Maybe someday standing armies will be sent home to play with their children and dance in their kitchens with their spouses. It is alleged that Robert E. Lee, his final words were, strike the tent. That'll work. Stack the arms, send the war wagons home, and strike the tent.
Happy Mother's Day, everybody. Another beautiful spring day. This is a song I wrote for my mom when I first left home to try to be a musician. Still trying. Goodbye, precious mama. Say a prayer for me. Head me down the road now. Set your child free. Oh, I can't look behind me. The wheels have got to roll. Where these wheels are turning now, hey, I don't really know. Save your love, keep it burning long, mama, keep it burning strong. Hold in time, mama, hold on to that line. Such a helpless wonder, such a mystery, such a price to sing this song for you. What comes over me? But one thing I can tell you, as sure as rivers run, love I feel for you right now will never come undone. Save your love, keep it burning long, mama, keep it burning strong. Hold in time, try to hold on to that line. Goodbye, precious mama. Say a prayer for me. Head me down the road now. Set your child free. Head me down the road now. Set your child free. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Reverend Pat, for shining such a wonderful light on strong and caring women in our UU history. We are very grateful for your words, and grateful to you, Mike, for catching the spirit of the day and of Reverend Pat's message. And now for a few announcements. If you are a visitor, welcome. I'm so pleased you chose to give our virtual service a try. If you like what you've heard so far and are wondering how to stay connected to our congregation, please reach out to our membership chair, Linda. Her email address is right there at the bottom of your screen. You can even get on our email list for our weekly newsletter. You'll have a head start that way on the Sunday service and be able to check out all the activities we're still pursuing, even during a pandemic. For example, our book group is reading Tales of a Female Nomad, Living at Large in the World. It's by Rita Golden Gelman. We'll discuss the book on Tuesday, May 18 at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Please check the newsletter for more information. Early reports are that it's a terrific read. We will continue with Zoom Sunday services through the month of May. and we'll try to plan more in-person services starting next month in June. The recent gathering at Jim Price's house was just lovely. Thank you again, Jim. Our friend Terry Taylor is another strong and caring woman whose work as a nurse and advocate during the AIDS epidemic is highlighted in Our State magazine in its current issue. She's a UU who says her religion is kindness and her church is nature. You will enjoy and be uplifted by the article. We all look forward to getting together in person when and where we can, and to sustaining our community's bonds by phone, email, and small meetings of the vaccinated in between times. I'd like to close with words from the book of Isaiah. These are especially for Julia Ward Howe and for Terry Taylor. For you shall go out in joy and be led back in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall burst into song, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. Go in peace and enjoy this day.